and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
So today I will be continuing and ending my college football schedule preview and point spread prediction videos with the Houston Cougars and Arizona Wildcats. In a few days, I'm going to start my game-by-game prediction videos. So starting with Houston. Houston, I think, has a top 5 easiest schedule in the country in 2026. Their non-conference schedule is very easy. They've got 2 guaranteed wins against Georgia Southern, who's a Group of 5 team, and Southern, who is an FCS team, and they play Oregon State in what's the second meeting of a home-and-home series between the two teams. And Houston, while they did beat Oregon State last year, they did struggle with them having to go into overtime to do it. And that is strange, knowing how good Houston turned out to be last year and how bad Oregon State turned out to be. But I think this is still a very likely win for Houston. And this schedule will give Houston a chance to go to the Big 12 title, even if they can just be as good as they were last year. Now, to win it, they will have to improve some, but if they go 10-2 with this schedule being so easy overall, even if they beat either Texas Tech or Utah, I think they would very likely be left out of the college football playoff unless they were to win the Big 12 championship. And if they go 10-2 with this schedule and go to the Big 12 title and lose, then I'd say they're for sure getting left out of the college football playoff. But with Houston returning Connor Wayman, who is one of the not best but better quarterbacks in the Big 12 and in college football, and most of their starters on defense, that was a pretty good defense last year. I'd say with that and this schedule being very easy, anything less than 8-4 would be a pretty big disappointment for Houston. So they do have a terrible way, though, to start the conference schedule, with it being Texas Tech and on the road. But with the news that came out the other day about Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback that Texas Tech brought in through the portal, who was one of the top players in the portal this year, this game may have just become more winnable for a team like Houston. Now, I'm not going to get deep into this because it's not a Texas Tech video, but Sorsby may not play this year. And Texas Tech, Houston will have 3 different conference opponents than they did last year. So last year they played Arizona, Arizona State, and TCU. And instead this year they will play Kansas State, Utah, and Cincinnati. And that makes the conference schedule easier than a year ago, because the 3 teams they played last year that I just named, whether they're any good or not this year, they were all pretty good teams when Houston played them last year. And while Utah might be an even better team than all of those 3 teams were last year, Cincinnati and Kansas State aren't likely to be as good as those 3 teams were last year. So the bye week, I don't think, comes at the best time. If I was a Houston fan, I would have much rather have seen them get it before the Texas Tech game or the Utah game or even the Kansas State game, because it's on the road. But I don't think it comes at a terrible time, because while Houston had a good year last year, they were not dominating teams like Cincinnati, and this is coming after what's probably going to be a very physical game with Utah, so Houston is probably going to be beat up. But to have to play back-to-back road games, Houston could have had it a lot worse than Colorado and West Virginia. Now, this West Virginia game is going to be interesting because that was the one Houston lost last year that knowing how good they turned out to be really made no sense. For some strange reason, West Virginia was able to give Houston's defense a nightmare of a game, and they had even more success offensively last year on Houston than Texas Tech did. And West Virginia can be a tough place to play. Their stadium isn't large, but especially when West Virginia is good, it can be a very loud environment to play in. And West Virginia, I wouldn't pick them right now to be good, but I think if there's going to be a team in the Big 12 to kind of come out of nowhere this year and have a good year like Houston did last year, and Arizona, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, there's a good chance it could be West Virginia, because the coach at West Virginia is not an idiot like the coach they had right before him, and I do think he's going to have success again at West Virginia at some point, and he's entering his second season there. If there is a minus at the beginning of the spread, that means that Houston is the favorite. If there's a plus at the beginning of the spread, that means that they're the underdog. A 20-plus spread is a blowout, and there's two of those, Southern and Georgia Southern. A 10-19 spread is medium, and there's 5 of those. Oregon State, Texas Tech, Central Florida, Oklahoma State, and Colorado. A 6-9 spread means it's close, but there'll be a clear favorite, and there's 2 of those, Cincinnati and Baylor. A 1-5 spread means it's almost a complete toss-up, and there's 3 of those, Kansas State, Utah, and West Virginia. So if I had to guess exact spreads for these games right now, I'd say Houston will be about a 50-point favorite over Southern, and about a 30-point favorite over Georgia Southern, and about a 17-point favorite over Oregon State, and about a 2-touchdown favorite over Central Florida, and about a 2-touchdown favorite over Oklahoma State, and about a 2-touchdown favorite over Colorado, and about a 10-point underdog to Texas Tech because it's on the road. At home, that would be in the 6-9 range, and I'll say Houston will be a 3-point favorite over Kansas State, only because it's a road game, though. At home, I'd have that in the 6-9 range, and I'll say Houston will be a 3-point underdog to Utah because it's on the road. At home, I think Houston would be a slight favorite in that one, and I'll say Houston will be favored by 8 or 9 points against Cincinnati, and I'll say they'll be a 3-point favorite over West Virginia, only though because West Virginia beat them last year. Otherwise, I would have that in the 6-9 range, even with it on the road. And if it was at home, I would still have it in the 6-9 range, even though West Virginia beat them last year. And I'll say Houston will be a 7-point favorite over Baylor. So Arizona is going to get tested in a big way in week 2 on the road at BYU, but they do have an easy non-conference schedule, easier than last year, because last year they played Kansas State as a non-conference opponent, but I still only see one guaranteed win on the schedule, and that's against Northern Arizona, who's an FCS team. The reason why I'm not saying that Northern Illinois is a 100% win is because they did beat Notre Dame the year before last, and I know that was a fluke loss for Notre Dame, and I'd say Northern Illinois is about as close to a guaranteed win as it gets for Arizona. And I would say that if Arizona doesn't win this game against Northern Illinois, that they're not getting anywhere close to as good of a season as they're hoping for, but I won't, because Notre Dame, the year they lost to Northern Illinois, also made it to the national championship game, and I don't even think the Arizona players and coaches think there's much of a chance of them doing that this year. But the fact that Noah Fafita is returning when he's already started 3 years in college shows that this is a team that has high expectations for themselves this season, probably looking to make a run at the Big 12 title and the college football playoff. And Northern Illinois was a terrible team last year anyway, going 3-9, and then they go on the road to Washington State. Another game that I'd say is a very likely but not guaranteed win for Arizona, because I'm an Ole Miss fan, and I remember last year Ole Miss hosted Washington State, and they almost got upset. They were lucky to win the game. As bad as they played, it came down to the last second. And while Arizona, you can tell not only from looking at their record last year, but from looking at their statistics, that they were a good team. It's also true that they were nowhere near on the level of Ole Miss, and if Arizona were to do what Ole Miss did against Washington State last year and just not show up, they would probably lose that game. But Washington State is on their third coach in 3 years, and the coach that coached them last year is now the head coach at Iowa State, which is a big reason why I'm so low on Iowa State this year. Because while that coach did almost beat Ole Miss last year, that same coach lost to North Texas a few weeks earlier by nearly 50 points. And while I know Washington State's talent level has gone down since the Pac-12 broke up, it's still not lower than North Texas is. So for that reason, I think the bye week comes at a bad time before Iowa State. So Arizona will have 5 different conference opponents than last year. So last year they played Oklahoma State, Houston, Colorado, Kansas, and Baylor. And instead this year they will play West Virginia, Texas Tech, TCU, Utah, and Kansas State. And that makes the conference schedule a lot tougher than a year ago. One reason is they play Texas Tech, and whether Sorsby plays or not, I still think is going to be a really good team. I just think that could have an effect on whether Texas Tech could be competitive in the college football playoff or not. But of the 5 teams that they played last year that I just named, only one of them, Houston, was any good. And after Texas Tech, they play TCU and Utah. So that 3-game stretch is by far the toughest stretch on this schedule, and it can't get much tougher than that in the Big 12. So I would say 10-2 is the ceiling with this schedule, because while Arizona's schedule is tougher than Houston's it's hard for me to imagine a 2-loss Big 12 team that doesn't win their conference making it to the college football playoff. But I do think it's possible that things don't go well, and Arizona has a 7-5 season. So at the end of the season, they host their one true rival, Arizona State, like they do every year. And last year was by far the best football year for the state of Arizona in over a decade. because it had been over a decade since they had both had a decent team. And this rivalry, though, has been very unpredictable over the last few years because the year before last, going into that season, Arizona was coming off a 10-win season, and Arizona State was coming off a terrible year after their first year under Kenny Dillingham. So Arizona was expected to win it, but then Arizona wins the Big 12, and Arizona State wins the Big 12, and then Arizona goes back to being terrible again. And then going into last season, Arizona State was expected to be great again, and Arizona was expected to continue to be terrible. And then instead, Arizona had a surprisingly good year, and Arizona State, while they were decent, they were disappointing and not as good as Arizona was. So there's two games on here where Arizona will be a blowout favorite, Northern Arizona and Northern Illinois. And there's one game on here where they will be a double-digit underdog, Texas Tech, and two games on here where Arizona will be a double-digit favorite, most likely Washington State and Iowa State. And there's two games on here where Arizona will be a close but clear favorite in Cincinnati and West Virginia, and one game where there'll be a close but clear underdog in, and that's BYU. And there's four almost complete toss-up games, TCU, Utah, Kansas State, and Arizona State. So if I had to guess exact spreads for these games right now, I'd say Arizona will be about a 50-point favorite over Northern Arizona and about a 30-point favorite over Northern Illinois, and a 6-point underdog to BYU because it's on the road. At home, that would be in the 1 to 5 range. And I think Arizona will be favored by about 2 touchdowns over Washington State and about 2 touchdowns over Iowa State. And I think Arizona will be about a 10-point underdog to Texas Tech. Because it's on the road, though, at home that would be in the 6 to 9 range probably. And I'll say Arizona will be favored by 8 or 9 points over Cincinnati and 6 points over West Virginia. Not because I think West Virginia is going to be better than Cincinnati, but because Cincinnati's a home game and West Virginia's a road game. And I'll say Arizona will be a 3-point favorite over TCU, only because it's at home, though. On the road, I'm pretty sure they'd be a slight underdog. And I'll say Arizona will be favored by like a point over Utah, but only because that's a home game. If it was on the road, I'm pretty sure Utah would be about a field goal favorite in it. And I'll say Arizona will be a 3-point favorite over Kansas State, but only because it's on the road. At home, I'd have that in the 6 to 9 range. And I'll say Arizona will be favored by 4 or 5 points over Arizona State. So that'll be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.